All right, so in a bit of a bombshell, Geno Smith is getting traded from the Seahawks to the Las Vegas Raiders. So we got to break that down, as well as the Myles Garrett situation that should upset basically everybody for several reasons. So I've got to talk about all that and more right after. First up, a couple of intriguing names on defense just hit the open market today. The Titans are releasing edge rusher Harold Landry III after not being able to find a trade partner for him. It's going to help free up $11 million of cap space, though, so it's not all lost for Tennessee, and they have their reasons. Landry is a solid player. He's racked up 50.5 sacks in 6 seasons, not including 2022 when he tore his ACL before the start of the season and missed that entire year. From there, though, he played in all 17 games in each of the last 2 seasons, tallying 19.5 sacks in those 2 years, so it's safe to say he's long over that ACL tear. He's still just 28. He'll be 29 next season, but he should have at least 2 to 3 more productive years left in him in theory. He'll join what's becoming an increasingly talented pool of available pass rushers and defensive players this offseason. Between veterans being released or star players requesting trades, more on that here in a bit, there's plenty of talent out there for teams looking for additional help on defense. One of those players that's immediately available now is defensive tackle Johnathan Allen. The Commanders had been trying to trade him, but similar to the Titans and Harold Landry situation, nothing panned out, and now the 8-year vet is free to sign with any team he chooses. Washington freed up over $16 million in cap space with his release, and they now have $95 million in cap space heading into 2025, which is the second most in the league. That's what makes it a bit surprising here with all the cap space they had that they couldn't or maybe didn't want to work something out with Allen. Obviously, that front office has a plan, and they made the NFC Championship game in the first year of their new regime, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. Allen is 30 years old and missed 9 games due to a pec injury last year, so the fact that he's coming off of a down year, technically, statistically, due to injury, probably played a bit of a factor into this as well. He did manage to finish out the last handful of games to end the season, though, coming back from that injury. So the former first-round pick and 2-time Pro Bowler that's averaged 5 sacks per year is healthy and ready to play for another team. And then staying with the Commanders and specifically their defense here, last night, Washington did ink linebacker Bobby Wagner to a new 1-year deal worth up to $9.5 million. Wagner signed with Washington last year on a similar 1-year deal and provided the defense with some veteran leadership in the linebacker room. This man was 34 years old last year and played all 17 games, leading the team in tackles with 132. He also earned another Pro Bowl nod, the 10th of his 13-year career, and made second-team All-Pro, the 11th time he's made an All-Pro team in his career. It's safe to say he is a future Hall of Famer whenever he decides to hang it up, but for now, he's running it back with the Commanders, who are very real contenders heading into 2025. Then today, a couple more defenders got paid, with the first being Bills linebacker Terrell Bernard. The Bills signed him to a 4-year, $50 million contract extension with $25.2 million of it guaranteed. It's a very solid payday and makes him the 5th highest paid interior linebacker in the league at $12.5 million per year, unless Nick Bolton soon beats that, whether it's signing with the Chiefs or some other team. That remains to be seen. But Bernard was heading into the final year of his rookie contract, yet instead of letting him play it out, the Bills decided to lock him down as one of their key pieces on defense for the foreseeable future. He had a quiet rookie season, but over the last 2 years in the 30 games that he's played in, he racked up 247 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, 4 fumble recoveries, and 5 interceptions. So yeah, the dude is a DAWG, and now he gets rewarded with a nice payday from the team that drafted him. And then another linebacker got paid, and that is Derek Barnes of the Lions. They signed him to a 3-year, $25.5 million extension with 16 fully guaranteed. He played in just 3 games last year before an MCL and PCL tear in his right knee caused him to miss the rest of the season, but the Lions clearly are not worried about his injury. 2024 was actually the first time in his 4 years in the NFL that he didn't play more than 15 games in a season, and his best year came in 2023 when he finished with 81 tackles and 5 tackles for loss, so hopefully he bounces right back or even better from the injury and picks up right where he left off in 2023. Someone else who's hoping to get paid is Vikings cornerback Byron Murphy. His 2-year deal that he signed with the Vikings ahead of the 2023 season expired, and we learned today that he will not be getting a new deal done with the Vikings ahead of free agency. He's expected to test the market, though the Vikings do reportedly want him back, And with good reason. He's coming off of a career year in which he had 6 interceptions, and since he joined the Vikes 2 years ago, he's tied for the 6th most interceptions in the league over that span. Spotrac has him projected to make around $22 million per year in his next deal, which would make him the 3rd highest paid corner in the league behind just Jalen Ramsey in PS2. If $22 million really is the number, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for the Vikings, but they may not have many other options, and honestly, if Sam Darnold moves on and you have JJ on a rookie deal, who cares? Pay that man his money. Anyway, why I say they may not have many other options is because their top 3 corners from last year are all free agents: Murphy, Stephon Gilmore, and Shaq Griffin. Gilmore is going to be 35, so I doubt he comes back. Shaq Griffin will be 30 next year, so maybe he signs another 1-year deal. Who really knows? What we do know is Byron Murphy is hitting free agency, and the Vikings are likely going to have to enter a bidding war. They should do it if they want to keep him. Next up, in some very late Friday evening NFL news, a bit of a bombshell was dropped when it was announced that the Raiders are trading for Geno Smith from the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick. Crazy because obviously this reunites Geno Smith with Pete Carroll, head coach of the Raiders, formerly head coach of the Seahawks. This is pretty crazy, and now the Seahawks could be a prime landing spot for soon-to-be free agent quarterback Sam Darnold. This is quite the bit of news here, something I didn't necessarily see coming down the pipeline. I thought Geno Smith would stay in Seattle, and now I have no idea, honestly, no idea what on earth the Seahawks are doing here. Letting go of Lockett, trying to trade away DK Metcalf. They're trading away Geno Smith, who is 34 years old, by the way. So you are getting a pretty quality quarterback. Had a great 2022 season, 4,200 yards. You have 30 touchdowns to only 11 interceptions. Both of the years after that didn't quite match or replicate anything like that. Geno Smith is quality. He's serviceable. He's going to be a better option than any quarterback the Raiders have had in quite some time, whether that be Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Jimmy G, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy gimme a break. So this is a good move for the Raiders, and you can't forget this either. Tom Brady is a minority owner, so Geno Smith will be able to glean a little bit from who some would say is the greatest of all time. I do want to add, though, that the Seahawks and Geno Smith did have some contract talks, but could not make progress. Now he heads to the Raiders. Meanwhile, Seattle is, again, expected to explore Sam Darnold, among others. And it's worth noting that Sam Darnold had a pretty good game against the Seahawks last year when he was with the Vikings. 22 of 35 for 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And I believe, if I remember that game right, one of those touchdowns was a go-ahead touchdown to Justin Jefferson to get them the W. So the Seahawks probably didn't forget that. They remembered it, and he will definitely be one of the quarterbacks in discussion to sign with them for the 2025 NFL season. This is crazy and starts a flurry of what's going to be some dominoes falling for quarterbacks for this year, and we're going to find that out in a couple of days what ends up happening. But pretty crazy stuff. Geno Smith to the Raiders, and then Sam Darnold could very well find himself with the Seattle Seahawks here in a couple of days. And before I end this crazy segment on Geno Smith heading over to the Raiders, Spotrac did say, hey, he's projecting towards a 2-year, $87 million extension, at least in their system. So it's going to be 3 years, $112 million total, as I believe Geno Smith was on the last year of his deal. And that brings us to this insane story about another defensive player who isn't wanting a new contract, but rather a new team. I'll get to the update that dropped today in a moment. It's blood-curdling, trust me, but here's some context first. All-star pass rusher Myles Garrett publicly requested a trade from the Browns at the beginning of February, but Cleveland has been pretty adamant they have no intentions of moving him. GM Andrew Berry shot the idea down at the Combine, saying, I can't imagine a situation where not having Myles a part of the organization is best for the Browns. Well, he's probably right. Myles Garrett is one of the best players in the league, period, regardless of position. He has 102.5 sacks since he entered the league in 2017, the second most over that span behind only TJ Watt. So, yeah, obviously the Browns don't want to let this guy out of the building, But let's be honest, this team is nowhere close to contending for a championship. They finished 2024 with a not great 3-14 record, and nobody even knows who their starting quarterback is going to be next year. That's not even to mention the impossible contract situation they've gotten themselves into with Deshaun Watson. But despite all logic and Myles Garrett himself saying he wants to be traded, the Browns have dug their heels in and do not appear to be budging anytime soon. And that leads us to this baffling report that came out this morning. And that said, Myles Garrett recently requested a meeting with Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, but Haslam declined to speak with him amidst the trade request. Apparently, when Garrett asked to meet with Haslam, he told him to go talk with Andrew Berry, the GM, instead. Well, I don't think those talks would go very far based on Berry's previous comments regarding Myles. That's probably why Myles wanted to talk directly, over the top of the GM, go straight to the owner, and come to some sort of an understanding, or maybe even it would allow Myles to plead his case with Haslam face-to-face, man-to-man. But nope. No meeting. Look, Jimmy Haslam can run his team however he wants. I mean, that's what he's been doing, and they've been sucking because of it. But to straight up decline a meeting with one of the best players your franchise has ever had comes off as a bit disrespectful, to say the least. James Palmer has a great point about this. To proclaim publicly Myles is very important to your future and say how much you value him, yet refuse to even meet with him face to face, actually says the opposite. But hey, there's a reason why the Browns are 73-138 with only one playoff win since he bought the team in 2012. And get this, it sidetracks, but it all ties together, and I'll get right back to Myles Garrett. But Albert Breer shared today that Kirk Cousins asked for and got a meeting with Falcons owner Arthur Blank this week to talk through his future. And while his situation is a conversation for another day, I actually legit got pissed off reading this, because if the Falcons can grant Kirk the courtesy of a face-to-face meeting with the owner after just 1 year on the team, it goes to show you how much of a piece of Jimmy Haslam is. Myles has poured everything into Cleveland for 8 years and got denied a meeting. That is honestly pathetic. Anyway, back to Myles Garrett and that situation. Tom Pelissero went on to report that Myles is, quote, even preparing to miss games if he's not traded. So this whole situation could get very ugly very quickly if a resolution isn't reached. When Myles requested a trade, by the way, he just wanted to compete for and win a Super Bowl. That's what he said. He's not worried about the money. He wants to win so bad that he actually turned down talks of a contract extension with the team that would pay him more money. He's making $25 million per year right now, which is sixth most among all pass rushers, but he's better than most of the guys on this list that's getting paid more than him. So this is one of the few guys that I actually believe when he says it's not about the money, because if it was, he would have just said, screw it, taken that pay raise from the Browns, and just finished out his career there, making as much as he possibly could. But instead, he's doubling down on wanting out of here, and honestly, I do not blame him one bit. But what do you guys make of all this? Do you think the Browns are doing right by refusing to trade Myles Garrett, or should they do right by him and move him to a contender, which he probably prefers? Or how about this? Just get the man a face-to-face meeting with the owner. You owe it to him. And while they don't have to trade him away, I get it. If they did, it would free up cap space and give them multiple draft picks, which would allow them to stay cheap with players on rookie deals until the Deshaun Watson contract fiasco can pass in a few years. I don't know, man. I hate this situation, and it makes me hate the Browns even more, even though I have a lot of respect for many players on that team. But make sure to let me know your thoughts on this situation in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.